her bravery's symbol or is epitomized by her, her encounter with the Jonaga ruffians. But no one really dared to explain who Jonagas are. So Jonagas are Jonaga Mapila. So the main word Mapila, I think everybody are aware of the word Mapila from Kerala. And in this region of northern Malabar, the Kadathanad region, in Nadapuram is still existing place. And so there it was Jonaga Mapilas who were creating trouble for the women and children who were passing through that area. She was resolved to end the menace of the hooligans, and she replied to her mother-in-law that born in the famous Putturam family as the fearless daughter of Kannappan, adorned with valor and courage, I can't stay back like a coward. Unniyarcha was very confident, and she took these Jonagas, these rowdies down single-handedly. I'm today talking about a famous woman. For all those who are from Kerala, who speak Malayalam, are very well aware of, have been growing up hearing the stories of this famous woman, courageous woman from Kerala. Her name is Unniyarcha. So her story is associated with the martial art of Kalaripayattu, which entire world knows that is originated from Kerala. And so these stories of the heroes and heroines are the stories of Kalari Maestros, their chivalry and their legends has been an oral tradition of folklore tradition in Kerala. And those entire stories have been collected in forms of a ballads known as Vadakkan Pattugal. That means the ballads of the north. Vadakku is north. So these are the ballads. If I translate it into English clearly, it is the ballads of northern Malabar. The songs praising the heroes and heroines of northern Malabar. Mainly people belonging to Naya and Tiya caste has been those heroes and heroines. Tiya caste is often clubbed with the Irava caste, and the difference between Tiya and Irava has been a lot of the time in the modern narrative of caste and the reservation narrative have been clubbed together with Irava caste of southern Kerala. But the social status and their the history and the legacy of Tiyas has been quite contrary to the narrative of upper caste, lower caste conundrum. First, we have been the known in our normal life in India. So the ballads, this Vadakkan Pattugal, I would like to call Vadakkan Pattugal itself throughout. So Vadakkan Pattugal, mostly, the most famous families depicted in the Vadakkan Pattugal are the house Putturam, known as Putturam Veedu in Malayalam, and house of Tacholi Manikoth Meppayil Taravadu. And our protagonist, Unniyarcha, belongs to Putturam house. And according to the famous historian, Dr. Chelattu Achyutha Menon, this Putturam Pattugal, or the ballads which are mentioning or which are praising the valor of the people from heroes from Putturam house, can be older as or maybe even earlier than 12th or 13th century. And most of the people or the heroes and heroines from who are praised in the Vadakkan Pattugal, they belong to Kadathanadu, Kolathanadu and Wayanad. And these songs have been propagated by a community known as Pana community. They went around, people belonging to this caste went around and used to sing the songs. That's how it has been propagated. And I think almost every Malayalis has been hearing, one or the other songs in their life. So this is a short in briefing about the reference for the story of Unniyarcha, our heroine. So the people who were the Kalari Payattu Masteros belonging to these houses, who are revered as great fighters, great warriors, are known as Chegavar in Malayalam. So Chegavar are those, and most of this, they comes from this Kadathanadu region, which is in the current Badagara Taluk in Kozhikode district, which is the region between Mayari River, which is Mayari River is the river flowing through Mahi, which is part of Pondicherry, erstwhile French colony. It's in between Kozhikode and Kannur district, and Korappuzha. That's the river which flows through, which divides the after Kozhikode, this Korappuzha is the region which demarcate Kadathanadu region. So the Chegavar, most of the Chegavars are from this area, and Chegavars are the heroes or the Kalaripayat experts, warriors who has been fighting on behalf of rulers. So if some rulers have some disputes, they don't go and set out a big war by themselves. What they do is they send their warrior, their one fighter, the other one also send their fighter, and these two fighters will have a duel, which is called Angam. So the Angam the duel between these two fighters in the Kalari tradition will settle the dispute. Who wins, according to their victory, the dispute is settled. And as a reward, the fighter would be getting enormous rewards, wealth from the ruler who has became victorious due to the fighter's ability. So that means all these fighters, all these Kalaripayat Chegava families has been very rich. Especially those who were excelling in their art, they were very rich. So there were total 42 Kalaris in the region, and the Putturam house controlled 18. And I'm talking about this time, the time of Unniyarcha, the Putturam house controlled 18 Kalari, and Aringoder is another famous Kalari master of the time. So Putturam house, head of the family was known as Kannappa Chegavar, father of Unniyarcha. He controlled 42 Kalaris, and among the 42 Kalaris, 18 Kalaris he controlled, and 7 was controlled by Aringoder, and the rest were divided among the other Chegava families. So now we come to Unniyarcha. So Unniyarcha, her name is Archa. Unniyarcha. So Archa is very famous name in Kerala. Unniyarcha is very famous in Kerala and often a synonym for courage. So when a girl is very courageous, then people call her Unniyarcha in Kerala. She has become the symbol of bravery, beauty, and fierce independence. So as daughter of Kannappa Chegavar, and she had 2 brothers, Aromal Chegavar and Unnikan. And there was her cousin Chandu was also living with them. And as the daughter of the most famous, successful Kalari maestro, and the sister of the present times most successful Chegavar, Unniyarcha also was not very bad in the art of Kalaripayattu. She was also equally trained in the tradition. And when she was of age, she was married off to the another one big family known as Attumanamel. There, the son named Kunjiraman, who was also a Kalari Ashan, means he was also teaching the next generation. So he was also as fitting a groom for Unniyarcha. And then there is some side story which says that, so in Kerala the tradition has been that the sister, the cousins used to marry the father's, the aunt's son and can marry the uncle's daughter, that kind of. So I don't know if so that along with that, so Chandu had some interest in Unniyarcha. That's what they say. But Unniyarcha has been so beautiful and so the best among all the women around. So naturally anyone can have some interest in her. So in our songs, the Vadakan Paatugal about Unniyarcha is continuing about the story. It starts with a dream Unniyarcha had on a fine morning. With that, so she wake up early in the morning and does all her household works, clean the courtyard, do all the pujas, and take a bath and then do the puja and everything and make the food. And then she go and wake up her father-in-law and tell him that the festivals of the nearby temples, the famous temples there, the Kooth in Allimalar Kavu, Vilakku in Ayyappan Kavu, and Velapuram in Anjana Kavu. So these three festivals are there. And after coming from Putturam house, my own house, to the Attumanamel, I haven't been attended any of these festivals. The women from the neighborhood are all going, so I would like to go. Then that's how the song goes on as this conversation. And then the father-in-law says, oh, it's not possible for you to go because it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous to go to these temples because on the way there is a place called Nadapuram. And in the market, in the Angadi of Nadapuram, there are some ruffians. There is a disturbance, regular disturbances from certain ruffians who are known as Jonaga. So these Jonagas has been eve teasing the women and also abducting good-looking women and children. So it's not safe to go through that area. She then asked the mother-in-law also. She too warned her the same. Then she asked her husband. Husband also tells it's dangerous to go through that area. So here I would like to explain a bit about the Jonagas. Because everyone, overall, we have been hearing the Unniyarcha's story. Unniyarcha's bravery has been praised everywhere, even in our university syllabus there is. And it is been explained that her bravery is symbol or is epitomized by her her encounter with the Jonaga ruffians. But no one really dare to explain who Jonagas are. So Jonagas are Jonaga Mapila. So the main word Mapila, I think everybody are aware of the word Mapila from Kerala. It means bridegroom. So that was a courteous title. Mapila was a courteous title given to the foreign merchants and immigrants to the Malabar coast. So the native Hindus was using this term Mapila to address any foreign merchants and immigrants in the coast, in the Malabar region. But then they had to differentiate between the various types of Mappilas. So Jonaga or Yavanaga Mappila was the name used for the Muslim merchants and settlers. And Nasrani Mappila has been the name, still Nasrani is the name used for depicting the Syrian Christians who has been merchants who has been settled in Kerala coast. Then comes the Juda Mappila. So Juda is Jew, Yehuda Mappila. So these three different kinds of Mappilas were there, and in this region of northern Malabar, the Kadathanad region, in Nadapuram is still existing place, and so there it was Jonaga Mappilas who were creating trouble for the women and children who were passing through that area. These gangs, as I looked into it a bit further, what I understood is that there has been some connection between why there wasn't too much number of Jonaga Mappilas existing in the region. Like, currently the region are more Mappilas, but that all happened later during Tipu's invasion and Malabar riots and all. But at this 12th, 13th, 14th, 16th century and all, Mappilas were not that the majority or anything. So still they were doing this kind of abduction and the women, taking the women and children. It can be connected with the Arabic slave trade, because according to the various historical records, we can see that Malabar coast had real close connection with the Arabian trade. Arabs were having regular trade with the Malabar coast, and many infamous slave trade middlemen were also having close connection with the Malabar coast. And in Malabar Manual, I have seen that a passing reference regarding how the local Mappilas and the Mukkuwas, some fishermen, were involved in, connected with this middleman. So this Nadapuram, the Jonaga ruffians who have been disturbing the women and children in the region of the Nadapuram might have been connected with the slave trade, I think. As I told earlier, Unniyarcha expressed her desire to, attend the temple festivals, these three temples. But referring the Jonaga ruffians, the family tried to dissuade her. But then Unniyarcha wasn't ready to back off just because some gangsters, some hooligans are creating trouble. She was resolved to end the menace of the hooligans, and she replied to her mother-in-law that, born in the famous Putturam family as the fearless daughter of Kannappan, adorned with valor and courage, I can't stay back like a coward. So that was her resolution. She decided that it's a shame that I'm stay back at home fearing some lawlessness. That we cannot, if we are hiding inside, how long? And that will be only empowering these people. That might have been the thought which went through Unniyarcha's mind, and she got dressed and tied her urumi on her body. Urumi is that long sword which is sharp on the both sides. It's like a belt, long and ribbon-like sword, a whip-like sword. So she wore it. It can be worn close to the body like a belt. So she wore it inside her clothing. And then her husband, Kunyiraman, accompanied her to the festival. They didn't send her alone or anything. They went with her. She went with her husband. And while passing through this Nadapuram bazaar, the Jonagam Mappala rowdies saw her. And seeing her beauty, they decided to take her and present her to their Moopan. Moopan is a local slang used for the chieftain. So they decided to capture her and they tried to attack. Kunjiraman, her husband, was a bit nervous. And she started, but Unniyarcha was very confident and she took these Jonagas, these rowdies down single-handedly. And to the husband, who was a bit reluctant and a bit worried and afraid and nervous, was shivering but the Vadakan particle is a bit harsh about him, that they were telling he was shivering. To him, she says, a woman doesn't shiver. Then why do you, a man, tremble? It doesn't matter if thousands come to attack. I belong to the Puthuram family. Have you ever heard of the women in Puthuram sending their men to be killed? Means Chegavar, all the men in their families are Chegavars who go for fighting. So when you go for a fight, you don't know if you will come back alive. So you are ready to die when you go for a fight. Then when she is asking that, have you ever heard of a woman in Puthuram sending their women to be killed? That really explains the confidence of the efficiency of the people of men of Puthuram, or where they are very much sure about their victory. Unniyarcha fought these rowdies through her Kalari performances and announced to these ruffians that, how dare you people attack the sister of Aromal Chegavar. And also told, if you continue this kind of nuisances in the area, there will be dire consequences. Hearing the name of Aromal Chegavar, or knowing that, when they came to know that who she is, that she belongs to the Puthuram house, and also they tasted her efficiency in martial arts. The Mappala, this Jonaga rowdies came down, kneeled before her, because they had no other choice. The panicked gang leader tried to, mellow her down, and they fell on her feet and apologized and presented her with several gifts. That's how the song goes on. So with this story, she became the symbol of female valor in the Kerala culture. So the major takeaway from the story of Unniyarcha is that she might have been responsible for suppressing, or at least rising up against the Malabar Coast Arabic slave trade led by the Mappalas. And also the extreme courage she has shown but that confidence she got, in my opinion, from her education, from her upbringing, that she has been taught the martial tradition, or the fight, taught how to fight. If you know how to fight, you won't need to worry about some ruffians on the street. If you don't know to fight, if you don't have that confidence, then you have to worry and you have to shut yourself inside the home. So that says a lot about Why? It's not about that the woman has to tell that, oh, women are so capable, so men should completely go away, take a backstage and women are so capable. That's not the point. Just telling that won't help. Nowadays, the feminist empowerment of women is like somebody come and empower the women, but the women are basically not empowered enough to take care of themselves. But instead, what happens is that they want others to go down, and they want to show that I am empowered by pushing others downwards. But that's not what Unniyarcha stands for. Unniyarcha was an empowered woman because see, the story says she went to she was a good wife and a daughter-in-law in the house. She did all the cleaning and puja and cooking. She did her job, household chores, and then she decided to go. She asked permission. So the ground for not giving permission was something which she could overcome because she could fight. She knew how to fight. So there is but people blindly decide, oh, Unniyarcha is a warrior woman. You see, we always praise a lot of warrior women, and also shows that being a warrior woman is the embodiment of being an empowered woman. But a warrior knowing to fight doesn't mean that she was absolved of all the other aspects of her womanhood. She was living her life as well as she was knowing the art of the art of how to fight. Both were complementary. So then the story goes again a bit more, where Unniyarcha's brother Aromal had to engage in a duel with another Kalari master named Aringodar. For that fight, Chandu, the cousin, accompanied Aromal Chegavar, Unniyarcha's brother, and he betrayed Aromal. So instead of iron nail, he put a wooden nail in the sword of Aromal, because of which the sword got broken and Aromal was killed in the fight. Unniyarcha's advice before her brother and cousin went for the duel or the Angam is also a noteworthy conversation. So what she told is, while my brother is going for the duel, so she is telling that to the cousin, you are the companion going with him. When he is on the pedestal for the fight, do keep vigil and be right beside him. When the substitute's churiga strikes, it will hit only through the middle if forged churiga is given. Hit through right first. Substitute's churiga will be thrown off. So she is advising how to, in her advice, there is a hint regarding if that sword is forged. So maybe she has foreseen what may come. Maybe that's why she gave this advice regarding a forged sword, if the substitute is giving a forged sword. Anyway, whatever she expected had happened. Her brother died. Brother was killed in that fight. So rest of her life was led in vengeance. So she had a son, Aromal Unni, and her brother Aromal Chegavar's son, Kannappan Unni. So these two children, Unniyarcha took care of these two children. She trained and she sent them to avenge her brother's death. That's another facet of Unniyarcha's life. So she sent these boys of Putturam to chop Chandu Chegavar's, her cousin's Chandu's head. So before sending them for chopping Chandu's head, she gives what she said to these two boys, that if you die fighting, I will receive your body in silken clothes and give you a proper funeral. But if you receive an arrow from a hidden foe, I will wrap you in green leaves and will perform no ceremonies. That is what she tell them before they go for fighting. Anyway, the boys went and brought back Chandu's head and settled the vendetta. And Unniyarcha grew older. An old aged Archa, her son Aromalani offered his support to his mother, as she was going to Omalur, in a temple for sitting for bhajana there. So spend her time, old age, in the feet of the gods, sitting in a temple for doing bhajan. And then the son maybe son might have felt bad, like why my mother is going somewhere else for aged mother. So he offered her his support, but then she told, your mother needed no support in her blow. So when she was young and thriving, at that time she didn't need any support. So now also she don't need any support. That's what she told. But she anyway advised him that on the seventh day after 7 days, come to the temple. So after 7 days, the son reaches the temple and he sees the mother's body lying there. So she was dead. She even may have foreseen her death. So Unniyarcha died of old age. That's what the Vadakan particle says in the temple in her region, in Omalur temple. But anyway, so this is the story of Unniyarcha. But anyway, for in the modern age, there has been several distortions, several alterations in the narrative, in the depiction of Unniyarcha's story by various interests. Some out of their fantasy, some out of their vested interest. So the first distortion happened in the popular culture. So I say there are a lot of several Malayalam movies, super hit Malayalam movies have been made based on the Vadakan Pattakal. Stories of various heroes and heroines. Even about Unniyarcha's story also, there have been several movies. So one of the famous super hit movie is known as Oru Vadakan Veeragatha. So it was in my childhood. So it was not very old, some in 90s maybe, or end of 80s. So in this movie became super hit, and the protagonist, the main hero was Mammootty in that. He got national award so for best actor. So this movie's script writer was M.T. Vasudevan Nair, who is a very renowned Malayalam writer. But the MT, I don't know. I mean, some accuse him of wearing an Hindu phobe and all, but I personally haven't haven't been thinking finding that much vested Hindu phobia in him. Rather than, I think he has been projecting his personal. A writer can be especially fiction writers may not be really writing with the vested interest or any atrocity, any antithetical mindset. They might be just projecting their psychological leanings and all in the protagonist or in the storyline. That most of the time that might be the reason for many of the fiction writers. But those who write history as fiction, that is different aspect. But so MT, I personally believe MT has not been a very Hindu phobe, but he always had been rooting for an underdog. In all his stories or whatever he writes, there was a kind of a bit rooting for the underdog. That psychology has been there, maybe out of his personal life. That's what I understand. I have read all his books, so that has been my opinion about him. So in this story, so always he has written a great novel. As a literary work, it's a very awesome work. But in that, he look through the eyes of Bhima, the one who has been always in the second position, who never could be praised as the best because of, some people always, although they are also they are also very good, they cannot be the best because somebody else might be getting all the praises. So looking Bhima in that angle, he had written, but in that some passing disfigurement of Draupadi is there. That also, I think it might be in my opinion, it can be a psychological, his interest or his personal interest in, going a bit low about women. So rather than going anti-Hindu. So MT's this Oru Vadakan Veeragatha. MT Vasudevan Nair was the scriptwriter. So in this movie, the movie is about Chandu, the cousin Chandu, who has been misunderstood by the world because the story have been always narrated praising the main people, so that is the feeling we get watching the movie. But it's not just that. To glorify Chandu, what MT did is MT demoralized, not MT assassinated the character of Unniyarcha. So she is the reason for all the, for why Chandu became bad. That is what he wanted to prove. So in the movie, he shows that Unniyarcha is actually wooing Chandu, but went and married Kunyiraman, and still she tried to woo Chandu again. So Chandu always had this lost love for Unniyarcha, which he became, because he is not rich and everything, he couldn't get. Unniyarcha played him, and then later when the the boys went to and took the head of Chandu. There also they shows that Chandu, who is old and who had no ill feeling towards anybody, who is so great. So what he did is he just gave his head to the children, telling that Chandu is born to be defeated because Chandu is not the main character of the family. So always Chandu is born to be defeated. Chandu is being defeated by the woman he loved. So that it's all nice, when in the movie setup and all, when we look, it's so awesome, that's very spirit. You get that angry heroes, kind of emotion. For a successful movie, these are good masala. But this became the popular narrative, or in the popular eyes. Then onwards, what happened? Unniyarcha became a woman who betrayed the love, who has been immoral. So the character of Unniyarcha, so she was a great fighter, a great warrior woman, but she was lecherous too. That became the narrative. That actually reduced the Shobha, the glory of her character, which in turn added to the guilt consciousness of Hindus, in my opinion, because then you feel like, anyone. There was one warrior woman, the great woman, but she has been not of a good character. Then you cannot be proud of her. No? I think indirectly that happened, or maybe even with movies and all, or it happens. The people who analyze things also, what they have Westerners. Most of these intellectuals who analyze have always Western interests. So those people have added to the wound, I think. So this has been one big distortion, which knowingly or unknowingly, which reduced the image of Unniyarcha into a very low level. Then recently, may not be much year, or maybe not even a decade, I think, there has been another trend which comes through with the so-called subaltern studies. You know, when this subaltern historiography, the culture came into the academic circle, distortion and demeaning our icons, and have become a regular trend rather than the earlier. Even the Marxists were not that bad. Marxists may have hid a lot of things, they might have been silent in a lot of aspects, they might have glorified certain people like Aurangzeb and all, maybe, but they were not as efficient in, you know, demeaning, bringing fiction as history, you know, that very much bringing stories out of nowhere and or creating new narratives in such a way that even they themselves cannot believe, but still they peddle the story without any evidence. So that kind of very, very bad, like this Wendy Doniger's depiction of our gods, or the what do you say, the Durga Puja time. There was a Mahishasur, you know, the Durga Devi was depicted as a prostitute who went and enticed this Dalit icon Mahishasur, and you know, that kind of demeaning of our symbols and icons and stories. So along with that, Unniyarcha also was not spared. So the story of Unniyarcha, they started to weave a new side for the later life of Unniyarcha, in which they tell she has been taken by Tipu because she married Tipu. The Unniyarcha, who has been either she was in 12th or 13th century she was living in, or maximum 16th century, never after than 16th century. That's for sure. But Tipu came and attacked in Kerala, the Malabar coast, in a end of 1700, 1790 something. So that's in the 18th century. So 200 more years Unniyarcha lived and then became the wife of Tipu. That's what these people says. So they say Unniyarcha so it doesn't stop in Unniyarcha being the wife of Tipu. It doesn't stop in that. They say she got son in Tipu, and then after Tipu was killed, she became the consort of the Wadayar. So anyway, every sultans were having a big harem, that we know. Even if they have captured some women from the place and took them to the harem, I don't think every woman in the harem was considered as wives, or I don't know. Or even then, Unniyarcha, who has been living 200, 300 years ago, before, might not have been his wife, or even in a member of taken imprisoned in the harem. But in order to make Unniyarcha as, disfigure Unniyarcha, disfigure this woman character who has been very strong and strong-willed and independent, and this academicians, from the academicians, what's happening, there are a lot of papers like that, they brought in the story of that Unniyarcha. One guy, one Mananderil Bhaskar, this guy has written a book also, and he claims himself to be a descendant of Unniyarcha. So that makes his book authentic. No, what he writes become authentic. You don't need to give any proof if he claims to be a descendant. So these are how they bring in narratives. So they say Unniyarcha became Tipu's wife. But I think might have been, might be a way of, taking revenge for the defeat they faced in Nadapuram. Because Unniyarcha defeated their sinister gang, which has been abducting the local women. Local women were all Hindu women, of course. So that is really a black mark for their, they try to project themselves to be the most emancipator of everything in the world, most liberal. Then they can, so about this slave trade connections also, there is not much references available because this aspect is not well studied. Nobody is interested. We have to be interested and we have to study, because even about the transatlantic slave trade, the slave trade from African continent by the Arabs and the later Europeans colonials, it has been well documented because there have been good research on it, because the people who conduct the studies have some interest in it, but adding the western coast of India into it is not adding to their interest, so everyone ignore that aspect. Along with that, demoralizing the women icons, not just ordinary human women icons, even our goddesses. Not just that, not just our what you say, characters and goddesses, women and goddesses, but the people who worship goddess, the communities who worship goddesses, are also regularly, systematically, depicted as immoral under the colonial morality, and an attempt to destroy their pride. The guilt tripping is going on. And Kalaripaite also has been a victim of that kind of a colonial morality, not in the modern age, but during the British time. The Kalari tradition of the Northern Malabar was the reason why there has been a very strong opposition to the European conquerors, especially against the British. You have heard of Palashi Raja. He was from Wayanad and this Kannur region. The Kurichias, the local forest dwelling Adivasis of the region, they are very good in archery, and the Nayars, all very good in Kalari. So the martial tradition of the region, the Kalari tradition of the region, was the reason why they could give a real fight against the British. Same is about the every other parts of India, wherever there has been early uprisings against Britishers. They all were having real good martial traditions, and most of these martial traditions or martial communities are goddess worshippers. So even in the Kalari tradition also, the Shakteya worship system is there. Inside a Kalari, there is a corner where goddess is consecrated. So it's clearly a very entire feminine energy is there with the martial traditions. So demoralizing and decaptivating these communities was essential for the colonial powers to survive. For that, because of that, Kalaripaite was banned for a long. And later, I think after independence only, again, everyone could freely practice, but still the tradition has been survived because it was preserved by the practitioners in the courtyards, inside the houses, So now we again see a lot of, Kalaripaite performance. And now the Kalaripaite became a performance. It's not a self-defense or anything. It's just became a performance. That's also an indirect demoralizing the community, so that you don't stand up when there is injustice happening against you. You cannot stand up if you don't have that pride, or if you don't have that courage inside you. So the mental strength is the most important strength rather than physical strength. So for that, what they do is they use the female, the sexuality. You use that as sexual aspect and assassinate the character, bring in immorality and reduce the, and that makes the followers and the adherents and all very ashamed. But in any case, the tradition of Kalaripayattu had always women learning it, practicing it, and as a testimony, we can see the few years ago, Meenakshi Amma. Now she is 70 years, I think. You may have seen, if you search in YouTube and all, you can see a woman doing Kalaripayattu wearing sari. So Meenakshi Amma was honored by Padma Award by the government of India. So from Unni Archa to Meenakshi Amma, there is a long line of women who have been trained in this art. So this is what this much is what I say. So if there is any question or anything, we can ask.
Amazing session. I just loved it. Unfortunately, I don't know, we have so much wealth in our country, and this is the first time I'm hearing about this story. The moment I got Sangam Talks email, it's a very good or a bad habit. We always go and Google it. And so first story I read was what you said, a beautiful, story that we would love to tell our next generation. And the next thing is the controversy that I read that you talked about. So when we talk about this thing, there are also other rumors to say that when you said that her husband was also, uh, if not maestro, I think of a similar caliber when it comes to Kalari art.
Yeah, he was a master. He has been running Kalari, he has been training also.
All right. So there were a couple of articles where they say that while he was a wise man, he was not as brave or as proficient as his wife, and hence they bring this whole narrative of a conflict between husband and wife. So this is one article that I read today, and it completely deviates from the main story. So if you could just elaborate on that one. The second one is you talk.
Yeah, we can finish the question.
No, that's all right. Please go ahead. So your views on this one, then maybe I can ask more questions.
Yeah, so the basic thing is that when I look at something, I will be seeing it from my perspective. Then my interpretation always will be guided by my own experience or my attitude. Right. Unyarcha was a very great warrior because she has been trained by the best trainer of the time, and trained along with the best fighter of the time, her brother and her father. So she had the best. She was the best. She being the best may have a little bit, diminished the ability or the glow, the shine of her husband. That doesn't mean that he is like some, that's all about the comparison. In comparison with Unyarcha, he may have a bit less shiny. That doesn't mean that he didn't have any shine. That's what I understand. But when when people who look only in this linear thinking, who see things only at black and white, so Unyarcha's husband was not as good as Unyarcha doesn't mean that he was very bad. Unyarcha was the best. One being the best means the other one being the second best might have been the second best, but that doesn't make that person better than the other person, because the other person is really best, but really good. But what we people would go on is that if he is not as good as her, immediately he is so bad. See, if I'm not first rank, but that doesn't mean that I failed. No. So that's how it should be. Because hers was an arranged marriage. Of course, when the father, this great father, and they all have their that much rich. They are from a rich family. They have all the command in command, and everybody was desiring to marry her. Definitely, she won't be married to some beggar. Her parents would have been married her off to equally, or if not the best. No, if not the best, if not better than them, or equal, or at least equal to them. They won't nobody send their daughters to somebody who is very much bad, lower than them in arranged marriages. So my common sense is, seeing things like this. But the distortion, see, most of this, that's what I told. I have seen most of these people, they are like that. For them, if something is not white, then it's black. They don't have anything in between, especially when they're defining things in about this gender or the historical narratives. There and all, everything is very straight line, nothing between. So that is maybe I actually in my talk I wanted to tell actually that we have started our Shaktitva Foundation also to talk. So this Unniyarcha's the story I have written as an article in Shaktitva's blog. So what we do in what we aim at Shaktitva is also this, bring in all this famous, all the real, counter the distortions on this Shakti aspect, or the about the female worship, and because the worshipping female is something which cannot be digested by the monotheists. It's very difficult for them to digest. So that's the basic core of our traditions, or our of Hindu civilization, which the colonial these monotheistic traditions would like to attack. That's that worship of the goddess is the basic aspect which clearly keep us distinct. And that is why even those there's elements who are not other religion, the people who are following the monotheistic religion, the traditional monotheistic religion like Christianity, Islam, or anything, but those who are following the neo-monotheistic religion, the religion of constitution, the secular democratic religion, progressive religion, they also first go against the goddess or the goddess-based systems, the tantrika systems, the Shakteya traditions, which we saw in Sabarimala and Tripura. That is another aspect also we are seeing nowadays. It's all connected basically, because the basic target, the primary target is our goddess worshipping system, which if that is removed, then or that is annihilated, it's easy to digest, because this is what makes, even in Europe, medieval Europe, that the woman-centric system which was being attacked, the witch hunt through Inquisition and witch hunt.
When you talked about vilifying, I forgot the gentleman's name. I think you said MTR, who actually has
MT Vasudevan Nair.
Right. I think the similar way has happened to Draupadi also. Somehow she is nowadays she's not just the reason for Mahabharata, but even to say that the reason why Duryodhan behaved in a way is because she provoked him. Yeah. So this is the way we vilify, the women that we, and our Sabhyata says that these are the 5 women to revere, and here they are vilifying everyone, starting from Sita to Draupadi and whatnot. The one thing that you said was very interesting when you said that Marxists are comparatively better than subalterns, but then don't you think it is the same wolf with a different skin? It's just that the methodology probably has changed.
Yeah, methodology changed because the see, it's all what I understand. What happens in the West, especially in the US now. Now it is US. their priorities and their internal dynamics changes, then they want to, refurbish everything so that they can safely continue what they are doing without creating much question on them. And the subaltern studies has been a tool to that. There, what they do is that those system is enabling them to bring voice for their minorities or marginalized, but that is you exactly used against us to empower destructive forces, because here the intention is different. That but the our intellectual arena, the academicians, they all are kind of vassals. They don't have originally, they don't, there is no school of thought originated in India, no, in the modern world. I'm not talking about our ancient systems or our Hindu system, but in the modern academia, there is no school of thought, or there is no original thinking from Indian academicians. So what happens is that whatever is originated in the West, whatever theories came in the West, that all are actually made for the based on the experiences of the Western culture or Western setup. They just take it here and put the old wine in the new bottle. They put so even the Marxist, when the term Marxist itself became out of fashion, they had to make a new form. But then the methodology also changed, and the old the Romila Thapar and all is not anymore the main people. So whoever became took over the space of JNU, or they became the professors. What the professor think and what the professor teach, that would be the basic idea propagated by the student. A PhD candidate has to follow what the professor says. Otherwise, you don't get the PhD. So definitely you will be the propagator. So that is it. But when we look at the gradation, what Marxists did, we always together say, we always tend to say Marxists are doing this, Marxists are doing that. Even our textbooks are no longer Marxist. Marxists have, it changed, NCERT, everything changed from Marxist historiography to subaltern long ago. And in that subaltern narrative, even right wing are falling into it. The current government also have, it doesn't matter which government or who is ruling. The people who are in the spaces where they can decide on what should be in the textbooks or what should be in the general narrative, where these elements are there. They may not be Marxist, so we won't be thinking that, oh, they are not Marxist, so they are okay. But they are also thinking along this line, especially this regarding this, as I told, the colonial morality, which I say, because all these judgments and everything comes from the court is only one side of it. But before a judgment to come, there has been the case going on, and for that there have been already a narrative building process happened, and that narrative building process happens for taking long time, and there these subalterns are the major players. For example, this breast tax story you might have heard, and you see Durga Puja, making Durga Devi, distorting Durga Devi. Draupadi also is, as you said, distorting Draupadi. So Draupadi shared 5 husbands. So why not, why we? That is, all these are taken and used to used in a different sense. No one is ready to do. That's also because I think the right sense of it is not given. There is not much opportunity to instill the right sense into the public, into the children, in the families. Now with the internet, things are changing. Our social media, things are changing.
I completely agree with you that we don't have original thinkers now. We are more in a reactive phase. Something happens and then we make a hue and cry. but we don't have critical thinking to say that, okay, our oral tradition needed stories, but it's time to actually decipher and find out what the story really means. Um, so while we don't have original thinkers, why do you think there are so many takers for this distorted story? So, for example, the same what you narrated today, such a beautiful story. Today, when I was looking for articles, I found only one article which was similar to what you said, and four articles with a distortion. And one article was very funny, where the person narrated 15 reasons why this story cannot be true, which means that Tipu abducted the woman and kept him in the harem, and then later on married her. And there were so many reasons, historical events, where he said that the Vodeyar family back then, the supposedly person who should have undertaken her, was born somewhere I think 1794, and Tipu died in 1799. Then to say that he was, there were three wives that Tipu had. All of them died before he died, and of course the whole oral tradition and the ballad that is there. But he says yes, there is a reason for us to actually go and further investigate it. However, he himself has stated 15 reasons why this cannot be true. This distortion cannot be true. Yet the conclusion is, it gives us a new thought. Let's go and find out the truth behind it. So why there are so many takers for this distortion which has no proof but too many speculations?
First of all, the thing is, if some Anjali do something somewhere and later on say Anjali did that, and they they take me and say that this is then this and that Anjali are saying. I think about Unni Archa, that might have been the case, because Unni Archa is not a very, only one person in this entire world had this name. But what Vadakan Patakal, this ballads talk about is this one Unni Archa, which is the, icon. But there could have been other Unni Archa, maybe. But for that, you need to have a visual thinking to think like this. First of all, the people who write stuffs, especially those journalists, if you are having this visual thinking, you will be jobless. Basic thing is bread and butter. That's a simple thing. There is no need for any intellectual, analysis and interpretation about why these people are doing this. These people are doing this just because they want to survive in this world. They want to live a very high quality life in terms of materialistically high quality life. They need to have regular salary. They need to have name, fame, career advancement. So if you want to advance in your journalistic career or in a career in a media, you need to be toward a particular line. And that line, that is why if you don't want to be like that, then you might be ready to settle your ambitions. You cannot be as ambitious as Barkha Dutt and as idealistic as us. You cannot have both. That's the basic reason why all these people why you see the distorted narrative more than the real narrative. No one pays you for writing the real narrative anymore. And if you are such a person, no one will give you any job. No one will, when some media company become in a financial crisis, the first ones them lay off will be those kind of people. Those journalists who are ready to toe the line, what the editor like, and why the editor likes such lines, then only he can survive as an editor. So money is the basic matter, and money comes more. Money and prestige. Prestige, we see. You getting a scholarship in America is prestigious. You getting a scholarship in India, who cares? So if you are very ambitious in your career, getting a scholarship in America is what makes you great. So you do what helps you to get scholarship or grant from American foundations. That is there. So that is why most of these people go for this narrative. And about in Tipu's harem might have had a lot of women captured from the Malabar region. In Malabar region, Archa is a common name. So any Anjali, see, kuch hota hai, Anjali is not me. But if you could put that and this. That's how these things happened. Actually, that's the simple logic I could find. That they connect to this Kuch Hota Hai Anjali and me together and to tell them my story in a different way. Then we cannot do anything about that. And that is how nowadays these stories are written. Not stories actually. They don't say it's story. They are actually writing, and they get credibility. The public take most of the public take anything which is written in the normal newspaper as something which is absolute truth. And most of the people don't think. I don't know why people don't think, because I think so. I cannot explain why people don't think like that. Most of the time they really don't put this all the bricks together. Same as about the husband. Somebody's husband being, see, Queen Elizabeth. I was watching Crown. So Queen Elizabeth's husband is not some simpleton or anything. But whatever it may be, he is not the king. He can not be the king. That's how it is there. That doesn't mean that she married some stupid guy. This is how they explain her husband, Unyarcha's husband, actually.
The next question is little disturbing because unfortunately I learned about Mopla genocide much later, because we don't read about this thing in the main narrative.
Yeah.
And the one disturbing fact when I read the article and hearing from you is that everyone says that, you know, the Malabar coast, everything was hunky-dory. It was only when the caliphate was endangered is when the problem started happening down south. And that is when the, you know, the religious violence, the you know, which resulted to Mopla genocide, Hindu genocide by the Mabillas.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I read the article, I realized that even at that time, a lot of natives were actually fighting for their honor and for their safety from, as you said, from the you know, Arabs or from the Muslim settlers in Malabar. So if you can see that it dates back to long back, it is not that everything was good. There has always been a native struggle with these, and this is not about the Christian settlers. It's not even about the Jew settlers. But the article actually highlights this part also, that there has always been problem there. Then why is it that the main narrative always wants to discredit and say that, oh, it only started because of something that happened in Turkey in 19th century?
So Khilafat and the subsequent Mapla riots cannot be put aside behind the curtain, because there is clear-cut records from the British. And the major national leaders like Annie Besant, Ambedkar, they all have criticized it. So there is very good documentation, because of which you cannot completely. And also Arya Samaj came down there to do the reconversion processes of the people who have been forcefully converted during the Mapla riots. So because of which there is, and it's very long back in the history, in the last century itself. So it's not easy to completely put it aside. Still, they reduced the intensity in the depiction, in the general narratives, and even the Marxist governments of Kerala have made it into a peasant. Marxist historians made it into a peasant revolt against taxation, and portrayed Hindus as the landlords, and they again brought in there this linear black and white dualism, and they whatever they could, they did to make it as a freedom fight and a peasant uprising, and even honored the rioters as freedom fighters. So in this well documented event which happened in the this past century, they could distort that this much, then those things which happened even long before, it's easier to distort or completely put aside. It's easy. That's one aspect. Another thing is, so about Kerala, earlier this sort of miscreants and difficulties or fights and that happened, but I don't think it might have been in a wide scale, in a larger scale, which brought in a large scale destruction as it was during through Tipu's attack. Because Tipu's attack was something which really was a real blow. It brought in a wide scale destruction and it brought in wide scale conversion. So that changed the demography significantly. The other aspects means some people were there, they might have done some troubles, but easier to suppress. So the local people may not have been in a real situation where they had to be afraid in that large scale. And also a large scale the problems also would not have been there. But with Tipu, it was a big typhoon attacking. It came and a large scale destruction happened. A lot of temples got destroyed and the demography changed very drastically. And also the local Hindus lost their control over the land also, because when Tipu went, British came in. It was together. So when we look at Tipu, always everyone look at Tipu and then, oh, the local Hindus didn't fight back. It's easier to blame. The Hindus themselves always prefer to guilt trip Hindus for not doing that, not doing this, rather than seeing why that happened. So what, especially current time, if why I am not doing something, I prefer not to blame me or our politicians. But at that time, whatever happened, you go without even looking into the particular reasons or anything, you blanketly blame the Hindus for not having enough asta, Hindus for not Hindus for having caste system, Hindus for having hierarchy in the society, oppressive regime of the rulers going behind, being lenient towards the non-Hindus. Lot of things everyone bring up. But when you look at Kerala, even for the demographic figures of Kerala, everyone blame the current Malayalis, the current Hindus. The current Hindus are those people who haven't left their religion, their community, no matter what. After all these issues, all what happened, they are still Hindus. They are still very, ritualistic, practicing, devout Hindus. So blaming them is kind of a, shooting the messenger kind of thing. You cannot blaming them is not the right way, because they are the ones who stood, no matter what, stood there. So Tipu came, and Tipu's attack on Malabar has been an opportunity for the British. The British could got control of the Malabar. British also got control of the Travancore. Although Tipu didn't attack Travancore, the Travancore army could defeat Tipu, but still British could take hold of Travancore through subsidiary alliance, and that changed the entire setup of Kerala, and that is when the Christian population also increased. So because the British could have their say. Whatever happened after Tipu's attack and before, it means the time between Tipu's attack and the Mapla riots, the Khilafat, that time period also had regular attacks on the landlords or the Hindu, rich Hindu families, like this Naxal kind of attack. There's Sridhara Menon, the most mainstream historian of Kerala. Sridhara Menon's book itself is having a passing reference of such incidents where these gangs come in and kill all the men of a Hindu family. That was joint family, so they will kill all the men, take all the women, and take all the property. That had been happening. So the Naxals also come in the night, they attack. I mean, they don't take the woman or anything, the aspect is gone, but the way the attack, I felt it like Naxal attack. So because an Naxal attack, I have heard well, it happened in my place. So come in, this both have very clear, the modus operandi has been seen. So see, same has been what happened during Mapla riots also. It started as Khilafat movement. They all came together, but then they thought, okay, use this opportunity to take over the property and the women. Same happened in Kashmir also, actually we say. But the problem is when what I am saying now, if I sitting in a university, if I say this, my professor may give me 0 mark. And not just that, may even rebar me completely. I will be in great trouble. I can sit and say here because I'm not worried about any of those things. I'm not in such much buri. Or if I am writing this in a newspaper, my editor will cut me off. Or if I am writing it in a book and trying to publish, I won't get a good publisher. So I won't be hailed as an author. I won't get awards. I won't be invited in talks in regular mainstream places. I will not become an Arundhati Roy. So basically, Arundhati Roy is the more ambition of the normal Indian, no. So we have been molded to be ambitious to become certain as characters. So if I'm a writer, I become Arundhati Roy is my model. If I'm a journalist, Barkha Dutt is my model. So to be that, what I have to be. That's what everybody. So that is why we are also, our entire generation, people are also not dare. They don't dare to look at it. Because I have, with this Unniyarcha story, I just went through, looked in YouTube if there is anything. Then I saw certain YouTube videos made by, I was just was looking what is the narrative in there. Then so in this Vadakan particle is there to study in BA, BSc Malayalam in Kerala. So because of that, certain people have made small videos regarding how to explaining the syllabus, how to, or what for the students. So all those people who explain things, they don't dare to tell that Jonaga is Mapla. Jonagas are Maplas. They tell Jonaga, and then no one think. I think nobody think what is Jonaga. They just Ratta Marna is our ability, So we just don't think when we prepare for exam, when we study in school, college, we just Jonaga. What is Jonaga? We don't think, because that thinking is not encouraged in our education process. So what happens is that you just Jonaga. We just, without even knowing the meaning, just going through is our habit. So we just go through. We don't even ever think about what is Jonaga. But I remember, and as a child, I read some Amar Chitragatha kind of Malayalam about Unniyarcha. I read in that the picture of the rowdies were the clothing all were of the Moklas. So that picture, which remains in my head, has been the reason why I got this idea clear in my mind. So something which I think that in our schools we lose that. If we think it is Jonaga is Mapla, and instead of Jonaga if we write Mapla, we will lose our marks. But actually what you wrote is right. So that, and then the thing is why we are made into such a submissive, brainless people through our education. Because if we know the story, see, I am from Wayanad, which is part of this area which the story goes on. That is through which Tipu came. So the rest, people who have who dig the land for building houses and all, some have got some gold and all. And then people used to tell that might have been hidden during when people fled, fearing Tipu's invasion. And there are temples which have been broken. The Jain temple broken is there near my house. So it's all Tipu broken. We know that. And Sultan's Battery is the name of a place. So Tipu's narrative everyone knows. And people name dogs as Tipu. So you know that attitude. But Still, when you study in school, you study Tipu Sultan as a great patriot and freedom fighter and blah blah, and you write it all, and you don't think connect this both. Why you don't connect this both? Connecting that both is prohibited in our system, and then we are forcefully molded in such a way that we blame ourselves. We blame our ancestors. We blame the Hindus for, and then comes out all these Hindu Swabhiman talks and the other side of the angle spectrum, who the Hindu activism and everything. We talk about Hindu Swabhiman. There also, then random people when hear all the our talks and everything in YouTube or social media, whatever we write, when they think like, oh, our ancestors didn't fight back. See, our ancestors fought back. That's why we exist. That's the point. But that thought is not coming because we are designed to be ashamed of our past. We are designed to be like this guilt tripping the Hindus and making Hindus apologetic is the basic aim. So, because if you are not apologetic, you may fight back. Our ancestors were not apologetic. That's why they fought back, and that's why the still India is Hindu majority. But 1,000 years of struggle. It has been regular struggle. Even British, everyone say 1857, first war of independence. Why it is called first war of independence? First war of independence. It's drilled into our head. Whatever fight back happened before is then can be brushed aside. So that all what happened, all these small fights happened is everyone who did fight as they can, and that happened through all over India. So how can we say that first war of independence is the first pan-Indian movement? It wasn't. All over India, if you look, there is each and every corner you can see fighting resistance against British, Portuguese. From Portuguese onwards, there is resistance. Same with the Islamic group. So there has been always resistance. Resisting is part of the Hindu legacy. But this way of thinking itself is prohibited. If we think like this, we won't get marked. If you think like this, you won't get UPSC.
And then we have the.
Then if you don't think like this, only you will get IAS and IPS and all. So those people who are in the system and who build the system, they are those people who don't think like this. Understand?
And that's the reason why we have Karnataka government declaring Tipu Jayanti. Out of all the people we could have made Jayanti out of, they really thought that Tipu Jayanti is what the state needs. So that's a tragedy of free India.
Yeah.
Could you? I think the gentleman talked about something that you're doing, dharma for people. Could you just talk briefly about it before we close it? If there are no more questions, I would really love to hear a little bit about that.
I have been in Twitter and all social media, so through seeing some attacks on at the Sabarimala temple and all, because as I told, we cannot blame the people, current Hindus of Kerala for anything what is happening in Kerala, because all what they are the ones who have stood firmly. So with my observation and experiences and all what we had in our and the people with whom I interacted, all were having the strong conviction that Kerala's people are not for changing the traditions of Sabarimala temple. So with that confidence, we thought we do something, and we started a campaign in social media, which became very viral. So showing that as the evidence of Kerala. So it was a women campaign. So the women came forward and told that they don't want the change in tradition. So using that as the evidence, because that's clearly showing that what the people whom you want to empower, they don't want that. So they are telling they don't want that. That means that you don't need to empower. So that as an evidence, we thought, okay, we go to the court and tell the court, because already the case is running. So in the case we tell. So that is how so for going in such an extent to the Supreme Court and all, we need to build our own permanent organizational setup. So that's how we started People for Dharma Trust for joining the Sabarimala case. And then we got, so for that case, we got Advocate Sai Deepak as our lawyer. So then that brought in many like-minded, brilliant people together. So People for Dharma Trust could not just Sabarimala, we didn't stop with Sabarimala case, we could be the voice of the people. So what we mean by People for Dharma is that, see, all these cases which some people go and file to bring in some social justice in a temple, they file the case against the temple's trustee or temple board, and then then the court and everybody put government, the Indian state or the state government, as the representative of the people. The people's voice is, according to the court, is given by the court, the government. But although it is democracy, the government's voice is not the stakeholder. The Hindu temples, people concerning the Hindu temple are the Hindus, and government's voice often is not the voice of the Hindu community. And that is what we saw in Padmanabha Swami temple and the Sabarimala temple. So we thought at least there should be somebody who are there to voice the people's opinion. Because government is not representing the people. When government fails the people, there should be somebody else. The people should go themselves to talk about their thing. So that is the basic idea of the name People for Dharma. And in Padmanabha Swami temple, we could be the voice of the people, because means our job, people's job, is to support our king, our royal family. So that's how the Padmanabha Swami temple case we joined, and there's several other. Then since we have an institutional setup, it's easy. That's the idea, basic, thing with the building institution. If you have an institution, it's easy to move forward. It is easy to do things rather than being an individual or an informal collection of individuals. It's easier to have an institution and use that institution to make a difference. So we have been involving in issues relating to state control of temple and make defacement of temples in the name of renovation. Similar things in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and even in Puri temple, Jagannath temple. So later we have also formed the Indie Collective Trust, which also is well known in Facebook, in Twitter. And then with this Ready to Eat movement of Sabarimala movement, it's a women movement where the women of Kerala, the native, not Kerala, the Hindu women clearly said, the Western feminists, that you are not representing us. We have our own voice. So with that, as a logical culmination of this movement, we formed Shaktitva Foundation. Neha Srivastava is the founder, and I'm also part of it. So Shaktitva Foundation is registered in US, but the basic aim is to build in the narrative for the from the Hindu women's perspective, which is where the Western feminism is completely not in not having any connection with the Hindu women. It's not at all the narrative of the Hindu women. So talk about Hindu women's experience and how the women-centric narrative or women studies about the Hindu civilization should go. So that's what we try to build in through the Shaktitva Foundation. So these are the three organizations which was formed as a result of the Sabarimala movement.
If I want to know the correct narrative or picture of Varnashram and societal structure, then what are the primary sources? I've referred a few books by K.S. Lal, the historian. Can you suggest any more books or material to know the correct societal structure?
I'm not a very religion specialist, one thing. And Varnasrama and Jadi, all this angle, none of the academicians actually do any justice to that, in my understanding. And I haven't done lot of I haven't delved into it much because I, for a thing, have an opinion that what is pertaining to the religion, what is pertaining to the the dharma, we trying to look it through the lens of this linear lens of this academic uh, studies. We cannot really make a sense of it. That's what, because see, rishis have seen Vedas. That's what we see. We learn. No? Actually, it is possible to see Vedas. Not Vedas. See is what I understand from the various practitioners, various upasakas. So this aspect of upasana is something which empowered most of the Hindu intellectualism in the past and the present. See, Ramanujan, Srinivasa Ramanujan has seen the formulas because goddess, his family deity showed it him. That's what he saw. He told. For an academic, from this our general academic uh, perspective, this can be absurd. This can be superstition. They may mock it off. But for a upasaka, it is possible. So that is the difficult, what you say, disparage between a practitioner and pure academic, just pure head intellectual use only the human head. So that distance between these two is there in the academic studies about Varnashramam, Jadi and all. That's what I understand. And I haven't put much effort in learning all these things. First of all, I'm not belonging to any Jadi or Varnashramam or anything. So because of that, I haven't had any sanskaras in the I'm not having the adhikara to learn the Vedas or anything. So because of which that's not my thing. So I have many other aspects to look on and learn on. So I don't really look into or try to be the master of that, which I anyway is not. So I didn't look much into that. There has been a lot of debates going on. I have seen, and I have a side. To take a side, you don't need to be very much learned. You don't need to be a PhD scholar to take a side on something. But to give an informed opinion on something, you need to be a PhD. Being a PhD scholar is better than being a 10th standard student in physics or chemistry or anything. And I think our scriptures are also should get that value of, same as the, not just scriptures, entire knowledge system should get the value we give to the modern academic subjects or science. I mean, physics, to a physicist, no one going to fight, with their normal internet knowledge. But to a Vedic scholar, people go and fight. Because that respect is not there in the people's mind. So I feel building that respect is more important than learning all these things. I mean, I am not in the setup to learn that. So I am not very aware of the things. So I didn't even try to find out which books are there.
What exactly drove you from these biased history and syllabus in the school to move into this path to rediscover the Indic heritage and the true narrative of the Indic culture and history? What exactly was that driving force for you to move into this domain and not become Arundhati Roy and Barkha Dutt, as you said?
Yeah, first thing is I am not too ambitious. Not being very ambitious is something. I never aspired to be the first rank. I never wanted to fail in exams, but I never wanted to be the first rank. There are people like that. I think, I don't know. My mother had big headache because of that attitude. I used to sleep a lot and all. But I was confident that I won't fail. I will get distinction, good normal marks I will get. But not having that too much, oh, I want to be that. That pushiness makes someone aspire to be an Arundhati Roy, first of all. No matter what, whatever information you get also, you will not settle for anything other than being the best. Then you will always be striving forward. That's there. Another thing with me is my mother was a history teacher in school, Kerala Government High School teacher. So from my very young age onwards, I have been having well in touch with the textbooks. I mean, her textbooks we will read anyway. Her answer papers and all which comes there, we just look and So there has been a from small age onwards, this fact. So history is all about facts and figures in the basic aspect. Narrative interpretation and will come later. Base is facts and figures. If you have the facts and figures, then only you can interpret and analyze or build any narrative. So facts and figures were the general Indian history syllabus in schools. Facts and figures were no good for me because I had this exposure. And then I went for UPSC. There I took history as my subject. So then I studied. There you learn to interpret and analyze also. But then the thing, and also read a lot of books. Most are the mainstream Marxist historians' books, Bipin Chandra, Raumila Thapar. That all what I read. But the thing is, for example, Tippu. I told him Tippu came through our area. So I know who Tippu was a destroyer. But what we learn is totally different. And then we think. So one professor who was teaching that time, UPSC coaching time, he used to say, a history student should always read in between line. Yeah, I indeed read in between line. That's one aspect. And I didn't went through the, I wrote mains and all, but didn't got through. So not getting through made it all this knowledge for nothing, no. That's the thing with UPSC. So, but the habit of reading and everything continues. And social media gave an opportunity to, so the basic, so I already had a temperament in this side. This, for example, the Tippu thing and everything. Being political correct is not very easy for me anyway. That's a personality stuff. So overall, that was there. And then in social media, it's Facebook, Twitter, and all, you go rather than in the general life, in the normal life, we see all kind of attacks on Hinduism in social media. So all these people who sit and write, and so the people have been writing a lot of things like that Sahashayanam with this horse in Ashwamedha. What all things have been writing some these people, atheists, they are the ones. And so when we get seeing for example, talking very bad about Draupadi, I always used to preferred to see Draupadi, for a woman, the entire entire country came to fight. And she not tying her hair until being avenging the dishonor she had to face. That aspect is what we in Malayalam and all, when we read in normal books, Purana books and all, that is what we learn. Or the spiritual writings happens in newspapers also. That is how it comes. But when an intellectual academic kind of Buddhijeevi or atheist people write, they go in a totally different way. And when we are with the mindset of the other, favoring the other side, it pains. So, and being in Germany, I got more time. So I started writing, because I cannot see something and just sit and repeat the things and just sit. So I started writing. So because to write, you do more research. So that is the reason. So there is no clear turning point or anything, but more attacks comes more inspiration to correct the narrative. That is there. And then I was working in government in Kerala in finance department. So that time I had seen how it works in government and how things goes. So when lot of accusations of this happens, that happens, and all happens in social media also, more informed opinion making could happen, I think. So it's a gradation. Gradually, it all became. So for Shaktitva, what blog when Women's Day, and see, I won't be able to think about or know more about such a character like Unniyarcha, who might have been in somewhere in Rajasthan. I may not know. I know from Rajasthan and all, I may know only who are shown in the mainstream narrative. From my part of the country, I could know people. So that is, so then I thought that is something which we can do, bring in those who have been completely hidden by the mainstream narrative. We have the opportunity to bring them in.